The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Warmest greetings, everyone. Kip Keefer back on TKR after about a week and a half hiatus. And it wasn't really an intentional pause in the programming. It's just that right now, monumentally busy with so many other projects, so much going on right now in all the various things I'm involved with, particularly Kip Keefer Sports, my media company, enjoying tremendous growth right now. A lot of responsibilities to continue that as we get ready for the first time with credentials to be a part of SEC Football Media Days, heading down to Tampa this coming weekend. And the action starts at the JW Marriott Hotel on Water Street in Tampa on Monday. All the coaches, some of the star players, athletic directors, all major media figures. It is going to be absolutely fantastic to be part of that. Kip Keefer and the First Lady of SEC Football, Terry Quillian, will be reporting throughout next week. If you're not in on the action yet, you need to sign up on any of our social media platforms. Kip Keefer Sports on Facebook, Kip Keefer Sports on TikTok, the Kip Keefer Sports YouTube page, which always has all of our programs, including our weekly television show in Birmingham on ABC 3340, 1030 every Saturday morning. Kip Keefer, Case Keefer, the legend, Tony Kurre, Terry Quillian, an all-star cast. You can catch that on the Kip Keefer Sports YouTube channel on weekends after it airs on Saturday morning. So we're getting all geared up to go down to SEC Media Days. That has required a lot of preparation and a lot of just different things to be done in terms of travel and arrangements and whatnot. But it's a tremendous opportunity, a big step toward credibility, and we are very excited to be part of that. And we're going to chronicle all of our activities because, as you know, all the Kip Keefer enterprises are included and in mind, first and foremost, of the fans. So if we're at SEC Media Days, you are at SEC Media Days, because if you watch our shows, the starting lineup, game time, the morning after, those are both radio shows, so I guess you can watch your radio, but not necessarily us. But all of those programs are fan-involved and interactive, and we really look forward to bringing you behind the ropes, so to speak, maybe inside the curtain, to see some of the action up close and personal from SEC Media Days. So we're really looking forward to that. The legend will be accompanying us, and he will be out with the fans, talking to all the different people involved, and maybe having a few face-to-faces with some of the prominent members of the traveling party that will be in Tampa representing the Southeastern Conference. So it's going to be great. We can't wait and give you full reports when that's going on. Of course, I've been following everything that's been happening in the country. I want to express my shock and sorrow at the passing of Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. I think all of us that live day to day and are involved and busy and doing a lot of things need to take a step back, and this is just a little bit of a perceptive moment. But Lindsey Graham had just landed at Air Force Andrews Base, coming back from a trip to Ukraine on a Saturday evening. The first thing he did was call President Trump and give him an update on his trip and his meetings with President Zelensky over in Ukraine. And he was talking about all of his activities for the coming week. He had a lot of things going on in trying to pass a couple of real key pieces of legislation, including the Save America Act, which is a shocking proposition that would require somebody to present an ID to prove they're an American citizen before voting. And that's controversial. More on that later. But anyway, a guy that was so involved in everything happening in our government, was right in the middle of everything, extremely busy, goes home to his home in Washington, D.C. He's by himself after traveling and talking to the president, made a statement earlier in the day from Ukraine before boarding his flight home. And all of a sudden, he makes a phone call to one of his staff members and reports that he's feeling very poorly. He's got bad chest pains. He has shortness of breath. She dispatches a EMT crew to his home. They have to kick in the door because he's not responding. And we've lost Senator Lindsey Graham to what's called a dissected aorta, which is the main artery bringing blood flow to your heart. And in a case of arteries hardening, you can have actually a split in that artery, which causes tremendous leakage and problems and tremendous pressure on the heart. And it was just like that, basically the blink of an eye. This guy who had everything going on, had his finger on the buttons of so many things in our government, so many pieces of legislation, world events, putting together major legislation right now to get the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, get Israel and Saudi Arabia to sign that agreement, and really change the trajectory of what's happened in the Middle East throughout our lifetimes. The Ukraine situation had strong legislation with bipartisan support to put serious sanctions on Russia, which we should have done a long time ago. You dry up Russia's economic opportunities, and then they will back off of this ridiculous war, which we've done some other programs on this. The Ukraine-Russian war is really a family feud. Ukraine was closely associated with Russia. The original Ukrainian government, when they, quote, went independent after the collapse of the Soviet Union, was a puppet regime really set in place by the Russians. And when the Ukrainians at some point later, 20 years down the road, 25 years down the road, tried to assert some separation from Russia, that's when Putin had swung into action. But there's so much corruption in this story. There's so much we don't know. There's so much money that we've just turned over that's been gone into the pockets or the coffers of all kinds of oligarchs and government officials. And this thing is corrupt from the day it started. And you know, it's not just a pure freedom-fighting venture. This is not a democracy. Zelensky, although that's billed that way, Zelensky immediately shut down any media operations that were in opposition to his policies upon assuming power. He jailed one of his leading political rivals. This is basically a corrupt dictatorship. And so you've got the lesser of two evils, because the Ukrainian people have gallantly defended their homeland and fought the Russians off into a virtual stalemate, and they were the heavy underdogs in this conflict, even though they had home field advantage. I always got to use my sports euphemisms. But the bottom line is it's a corrupt war. It doesn't really have good guys and bad guys. But Lindsey Graham basically representing the Ukrainian people with the fighting spirit to try and preserve their homeland, has been a huge advocate and supporter of those efforts, and had just come back from Ukraine. So a terrible loss for our country, a senator that was totally engaged, popular on both sides of the aisle, really a true politician, but politicians become kind of a dirty word. Just a great operative in the government, a guy who got things done, who passed major legislation, and was a tremendous asset to our president, Donald J. Trump. So rest in peace, Lindsey Graham. It's shocking. And for all of us, we know that the nature of being a human being is all of us are always day to day. But this is a guy who was right on top of his game at his absolute peak in terms of his involvement and what he was involved in terms of taking care of business and championing some very important pieces of legislation. Really, arguably, the most key guy in the Senate to get things done. And in just basically some blinks of an eye, it's over. He's gone. The suddenness of it is very attention-getting to me. I'm at a point in my career that a lot of things are happening, and I'm completely consumed and busy, but I'm not going to take for granted a single second of any day going forward. And that's the other lesson from Lindsey's passing, is this is a guy who was in the middle of everything, had all kinds of plans, and was heavily engaged, and now it's just suddenly over, and it's not in our control. We can take care of ourselves and do the right things, but this is just a fragility of life lesson shouted from the mountaintops that you've got to cherish every moment. You got to take advantage of every day. You don't take things for granted, and I promise you I will not from here forward. With that being said, I want to talk real quick, and this is not the subject matter, but I've had an experience this week with a situation. One of the people traveling with me to SEC Media Days has never been able to obtain the STAR license required now to board an airplane and fly in this country. The STAR license program, of course, was implemented back in like the early 2000s, but not enforced and not demanded to be complied with for 20-something years. Then in 2024, all of a sudden they said the deadline is here. You've got to get a STAR license or you're not going to be able to board a plane. And to get the STAR license, you had to come up with 2 forms of ID, prove who you were, establish your residence, and get this special government-mandated certification on your regular driver's license. Well, one of the people in my traveling party did not ever get the STAR license. He hasn't flown for many, many years. And when this trip came up to Tampa that he's included, we've had to scramble here in the last days to get him certified to go. But I've learned something that just absolutely blows my mind, and I wanted to share it with you guys, because it's absurd. They tell us the reason for the STAR IDs is so they can have an absolute identification of every American citizen. They knew exactly what your situation was. You had been certified as, it's a bad word, but stamped basically as a legitimate citizen with your STAR federal ID, that you have to go through all the hassle of proving your ID and taking all this identification. It is a big hassle. But now we learn, as we've tried to obtain the birth certificate of this individual from the state of Maryland, who has promised several times to send the information, and it never materializes. They've been just kind of giving him the runaround. So now we're a week away, and he still had no ID, just the regular license. But we find out this week that, and this is just so absurd, supposedly the justification by the federal government for this legislation was to ensure that everybody was well identified that got on a plane. It was a safety measure to keep anybody with nefarious intentions off American airliners, not traveling the airwaves without this certified ID. But we find out this week, you can still fly. All you have to do is go on a government website, the TSA website, and if you pay $45, You get a 10-day pass where you can get on any airplane and fly anywhere you want. Doesn't matter what kind of ID you have. It just requires a regular license and not the star license. $45. Now, I think that pretty much goes against and contradicts the whole idea of the star identification process, and it really reveals what that really is. It is a way to get a complete and thorough update of American citizens so Big Brother can keep an eye on everything you're doing in terms of activities. They wanted everybody registered and accounted for, and that was the real motivation. Safety on travel is not obviously a priority, because I think any terrorist who has bad intentions can probably scrape together $45 and buy an exemption. The whole thing is so absurd that you can pay a fee to a government agency and get an exemption on getting what's required to fly. I just thought that was mind-boggling, and I wanted to make you aware of it because it really speaks volumes loud and clear that everything we're told so much by government, and this goes back to Democrat and Republican administrations that have just kind of shepherded this thing along for 20 some odd years before they made everybody comply during the Biden administration, of course. And now you can pay $45 and just bypass the whole process. I don't think safety can be cited anymore as a reason that was implemented. So that's kind of the hypocrisy of that. Now, to get back on a theme I talked about a couple of weeks ago, if you are a lifetime Democrat, if you are a legacy Democrat, if your father and your grandfather and all of their predecessors always voted Democrat, you've always identified as a Democrat, guess what? You're homeless now. There is no Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is being consumed with gigantic bites by the DSA, Democrat Socialist Party. The Democrat Socialists, I've talked about it here on the show before. Democrat is a person who practices democracy. Socialism is the furthest thing, almost the polar opposite of democracy. You can't be a Democrat socialist. That is not possible. It's like being, and I've used this term before, it's like being a vegan carnivore. You can't not eat meat and just consume vegetables and plants. You can't be both. They're opposites. And that's what a Democrat socialist is. The whole thing is just absurd. But this week, this has been simmering in the underbelly of our country and every civilization in the world. This elitist group of people who think they know better than you how to run your life support this kind of governmental approach where it is clearly a situation where the government becomes all powerful and the people just become all tie for first place, basically at the mercy of whatever government mandates. And the other great description is it is trading individualism, which this country is built on, self-reliance, the American dream, chasing after fame and fortune with all of your faculties, giving you a chance to be anything that you aspire to be if you work hard enough and get a few breaks and make things happen. It takes us from individualism to collectivism. Everybody's in the same bucket except for the massive elites who know how to do everything better. And this is the straight definition of communism. And we say communism in this country, and people react to it in different ways. If you call somebody a communist, it's like a big insult. But this is truly a communist movement in this country, and they think this is the time to seize control. They have definitely seized control of the Democrat Party, and there are no traditional Democrats anymore, and the few that are trying to hang in there are being quickly towed and booted aside by this extreme leftist movement. And what they're selling is a bunch of bunk. It's a rotten banana, and don't buy it. I don't care if you voted Democrat in every election of your entire life. If you vote for these people posing as Democrats, but espousing this Democrat socialist agenda, you're not voting for Democrats, you're voting for communists. Do you want to live in a communist country? Really? Did you see what they put out this week? They're not even shy about it. The platform that they laid forth, if it doesn't scare the bejesus out of everybody who reads it in this country, you just don't have a functioning brain. Because what they're doing, they're trying to exploit the hardworking people of this country that are having trouble getting by, and I concede there's a lot of those people. I was one of those people for a lot of years, paycheck to paycheck, just trying to make the best of things. I get it. I've been there. But now this movement is trying to convince you that they have the magic formula, just like so many other governments have been able to form in the past. Most recently, Venezuela completely trashed that country. The government takes over everything. And this is just not illustrative prose. This is reality. If you read the platform, listen to the things they want to do. They want to basically eliminate all three traditional forms of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And they want to replace it with the same kind of system that you had when the Soviet Union formed in the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 and other communist countries that have come along since. There would be no more presidential elections. You would not be able to go to the polls and vote for president. The only thing you would, quote, vote for would be candidates that would be pretty much all from the same party with the same persuasion and go up there, would get rid of the Senate, so the legislative branch would be blown up. It would be basically the equivalent of the modern House of Representatives, but it would be more in the form of a Politburo, which is what they have in communist countries, of some delegate representatives, and they would vote internally on who to make the premier, the head of the government. Not you. It wouldn't be your choice anymore. They would also get rid of the judicial branch, eliminate the Supreme Court, make sure that anything that they imposed could not be overturned in some kind of court of law, because the only ruling body would be this Politburo with the dictator that they appoint. And you would have nothing to say about it. That's just the way it is. And again, I'm not just blowing this out my backside. I'm telling you exactly what their platform is. They have some other pretty interesting ideas. They would completely eliminate the Department of War, which means we would have no military. They would immediately grant amnesty to every immigrant in the country, full citizenship with voting rights and everything else. These people would be given a free pass. People that have been illegally in the country, people that have committed crimes, major crimes, murders, rapes, it's all good. Everybody stays. Nobody gets deported. No more ICE. No more Department of Homeland Security. All that eliminated. Defunding of police. No more law enforcement. The elimination of prisons. No more incarceration. And if you're listening to this going, this guy is nuts, this Kip Keefer is off his rocker, as Yogi Berra, the famous baseball one-liner specialist, said, and you can look it up because they have published this platform. All the things I'm telling you, this is what they're pushing for. Do you want to live in a country that has no police, that has no prisons, that is just the streets are being roamed by major criminals and the worst dredges from other countries just routinely. Would your children and your wife and your family be safe? I mean, the whole thing is so absurd that these people actually are trying to sell this, and they're trying to sell it under the guise of, we know how hard it is for the working man. But this just in, folks, if you're a working man, they're going to take almost everything you make, and they are going to try and pay for all of this nonsense with the labor of anybody who works, because the system is basically created for anybody to freeload and still be paid by the government just for drawing breaths. Free college. How are they going to send people to college for free? And what would be the point of that if there's really no jobs? The other really scary aspect is they want to seize all industry, all commerce, no more private companies, no more private businesses. It would all be government owned and operated. All the means of production, all the distribution, all the sales run by government. Now ask yourself this question. Even in our current system, what is government good at? Is government efficient? Is government reliable? Remember what Ronald Reagan said. Some people look to the government for answers to their problem, but they have to understand government is the problem. And these people want to make government all powerful, all controlling, and you need to get a clue if you are buying any of this drivel by taking the time and Googling the platform of the Democrat Socialist Party, because it is scary. And if these people continue to win elections and continue to spread, this thing could be a runaway fire that will destroy this country, because you take the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all the founding documents, everything we've done in 250 years, they are going to tell you that this country is evil, this country is corrupt, this country is far from perfect. But this system, where everybody can reach for the stars and achieve to the maximum of their ability, it will be gone, because these people don't believe in that. They're smarter than you, and they're appealing to people that are struggling at the bottom of the economic system, who have been, since the implementation in 1978 of the U.S. Department of Education, which was basically created for one purpose and one purpose only, to put a bunch of provisions in American schools to stop teaching history, to stop teaching civics and government. So you've got a couple of generations now of people that have gone to these schools and learned nothing about the history of the world and what works and what doesn't work. So you've got a class of people that are economically depressed and seriously mentally depressed, because they think the system's rigged against them, but they don't realize that in this system, it's going to be rigged against everybody. We're all going to tie for last place. That's what it's all based on. That's what collectivism is. We're all supposed to put our shoulder to the wheel and work and pay for the lazy, the listless, and the clueless. While the real interesting part of this is the people really pushing this are the academics at the highest levels of American education that have educated a whole group of silver spoon people that have generational money, really riding the gravy train and taking advantage of all the opportunities that America had to give. These people that have never worked a day in their life, second, third, fourth generation millionaires, billionaires, and they believe in this system because they think this would never touch them. They're not working for their money. They already have generational wealth. So they do not like and actually resent if you or I make a success out of ourselves and reach that same pinnacle of prominence and wealth that they occupy the day they are born. These people have been poisoned in the mind by professors identifying that America is evil and corrupt, despite the fact that all of them have benefited from what America has been and will continue to be if we don't stop this thing. So you've got the upper crust elites and the lowest people that are struggling to survive because they have not been given the proper education and the proper motivation to go out and make something of themselves. They just want to point a finger and blame everybody. The costs are too high. Of course, the platform also talks about affordable housing, free health care. Everything's given to you. That doesn't work, folks. In the history of the world, every attempt at any kind of government like this is a massive, disastrous failure, and tens of thousands, if not millions of people, every time it's been tried, have literally died. So you've got to pay attention. You've got to step up. If you've been a Democrat, there is no Democrat Party now. It has been hijacked by a communist movement. Don't be sold on this Democrat socialist BS. That's not what it is. This is a communist move to strike now while the iron's hot, using Donald Trump as the great antichrist and trying to seize this government. And when they do, they're going to make all kinds of changes that can't be reversed. It's got to be stopped, and it's got to be stopped now in its tracks. And I'm sounding the alarm. If you don't pay attention, I know so many people that say, well, I don't pay attention to the news. It's too depressing. Well, you better damn well pay attention, because they're trying to take our country away. And even if you're not flourishing right now, any chance you have for success in the future is going to be decimated and gone if this thing is allowed to progress. We've already got socialist mayors in charge, really communist mayors, in charge of some of our biggest cities. It's got to be stopped. It's got to be, the American people must rise up and not just be indifferent and let our country, founded on principles of Judeo-Christian province, and has been the most shining example of success in the history of the world, well, now, because these people think they can exploit those that they didn't educate, that don't know any better, that this system has no chance of being successful. You don't get a free lunch. Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of England, said many years ago, the problem with socialism, communism, is eventually you run out of other people's money to spend. It's a disaster. We're on the Titanic. That's the iceberg up ahead. It's time to swing into action and stand up for America, stand up for your rights and the future of your children and grandchildren to live in the greatest country in the world and have every opportunity available to them. That's this week's Kip Keefer Need to Know, because of all the shows I've done, this is what you really needed to know. Get involved. Say no. I'm not telling you who to vote or how to vote, but if you're thinking you're voting Democrat, you better be damn sure it's not one of these complete, desperate, opportunists that are trying to hijack that party and turn America into something that nobody wants to see, that won't succeed, and will be a third world hellhole in no time if we let it happen. That's my warning. That's my cry. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week here on TKR.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.